I would say no is just because of how physical football is. Football also it's 11 on 11. It's not 5 on 5, such as hockey, where it's also a quick change. It's full contact 11 on 11. So I think you need to have, kind of that deep of a roster to just get through, the war of attrition on what that season is, even on any given day. So I definitely think it's necessary for that. And I'm okay with kickers in actual football. I think they provide quite a bit of strategy to it that I enjoy that portion of the game. Instead of kind of going for it. Now, I mean, would it increase scoring if we actually got rid of kickers? Yeah, probably, because it would force teams to always go for it on fourth down. And if they're like on the goal line, they turn it over. That's going to essentially be an automatic touchdown for the other team. So that may end up pushing offense too far the other direction.
Yeah, I don't want to challenge too much that football isn't a violent physical sport, because it absolutely is. But it wasn't... that sport isn't also foreign to the idea of people playing both offense and defense. And maybe you can create different ways to, allow it to be less physical, or I don't know, just make it the war of attrition. I'm looking up, by the way, number of players, including subs, that you would have on a rugby team. It's 15, dude. That's that's a very physical and violent sport as well. But you're talking about a fraction of what an NFL team would have on the sideline.
Yeah, and I think rugby's a shorter.
It's very much shorter, but we had this conversation too about how much time is actually played, right, in between the whistles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
You're only talking about 11 minutes of actual gameplay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Food for thought.
It is shocking. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely food for thought. I'm definitely open to the idea. Some of the other stuff that you put on here, and this one immediately jumped out to me because I think this should 100% be an additional statistic, is interception responsibility. I mean, I think it does open it up to some interpretation.
Yeah, so let's expand on that, though. I think you knew what I was talking about, but in case anyone's listening and going, what are you talking about? Who has to carry the responsibility in their stat list of an interception. So if the ball tipped off someone's hands, a receiver's hands, but it was right to them in the numbers, but he biffed it and someone caught it midair. Who takes the onus on that? Is that really all the quarterback's fault or the receiver?
Yeah, and a lot of the times, it is definitely going to be the receiver's fault. I think if you would list officially scored as a dropped pass, if it were to hit the ground, then that should be on the receiver if it gets intercepted.
Yeah.
And that's on them.
Yeah, and think about the fantasy implications. I mean, it would have a big difference.
It would absolutely have a big difference on them. And, one of the other things I would love to see is, overtime rules changed. I think this is where I would like to see a little bit more fun into the game.
Make it like college at least, or make it, change the structure entirely.
To an extent, I'm okay with us playing, the 10-minute quarter now. But then, yes, if we go to, I think then we just essentially go straight to 2-point conversions. And until one team can't stop the other.
Yeah. I mean, most football fans, I think, would agree that a tie is it's boring. Yeah. It's like kissing your sister. Blah. I don't really care personally. I think ties are just fine for the NFL currently. But clearly, I think the base of the NFL, viewership or the fan base, they want to get rid of ties. So that would be a good way to do it. Go to shootout style 2-point conversion. I would go all about that.
After exactly. After the overtime period, you line up on the 2 and you alternate. Not like the 4 downs like college or anything like that. Just straight up 2-point conversions until someone comes out on top. And that would be what I'd like to see, because how often is it really going to get to that? We get maybe one tie a year. So, it's very, very few, but I think it would certainly add a very nice element to the game that and when it does happen.
And to me, when it does happen,
be enjoyable.
Right. You spend all next week basically, like if you watch any pregame NFL show, they're going to talk about how embarrassing, like let's laugh at the tie that happened, how ridiculous, win like a real football team or at least lose, whatever. That's the same like joking element to it is much like with kickers to me. It kind of goes back to that. Like if we're going to poke fun at a rule so much, like maybe we should do something about it. Maybe something should happen.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the big thing. Actual like physical rule change I would love to see happen. That would be very impactful for the game. The statistical responsibility, I think that's honestly really more of a fantasy thing, and I think we can both agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure the quarterbacks are all for that because it makes them, makes them seem like they're not throwing nearly as many interceptions. But
right,
I think those would be two that I would love to see. And
now, here's an interesting one as well that I was discussing over the weekend. If a quarterback throws a 1-yard forward pass, but that player runs for an additional 50 yards after the catch for a touchdown, should that responsibility, much like with interceptions, shouldn't that be weighted heavier toward the actual receiver, running back, wide receiver, on a screen pass, whatever? They should get more of the credit than the quarterback actually getting a touchdown pass.
Well, I think we do give the credit to the receivers in that sense, especially if they make that big play. Verbally. Deebo Samuel's someone that jumps to mind for me.
Hell yeah.
Catches a lot of balls around the line of scrimmage, and because he's so athletic and so fast, he's able to take that, 5-yard crossing route to the house. So he's someone that comes to mind that is able to do that. And, I think it's definitely credit given to him versus, necessarily Garoppolo for throwing, let's say a 75-yard touchdown pass. I think it's kind of a give and take. Statistically, I'm not sure how we could differentiate. I mean, but we do with Yak, yards after the catch.
Right.
That is its own statistic.
I think the yards.
There,
and this again is kind of brought up more with like fantasy in mind. That Yak yards should perhaps be devalued toward the quarterback, because they really didn't have a whole lot to do with it. And you could argue like, well, they positioned the ball well enough for him to run right into the ball rather than catching it behind them. And that opened up a lane for them because they were still in full sprint. I mean, I see that argument. But at the same time, the athlete making the play after the catch is the receiver. The quarterback really doesn't have anything else to do with it. Like if they fumble the ball, that's not on the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the quarterback would get all the stats for it, just not the turnover. So,
right.
Are we going to overweight? Are we then going to overweight the deep ball? Anything, more than 20?
I think that would be cool.
Back onto the quarterback?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it starts to maybe get a little too confusing. But I think after you give it a little time, and I think it would settle in. Especially that would kind of make it more exciting, though, too, because it would change the way you also pick up quarterbacks, like who's willing and who has a deep threat weapon on their team. Like those points are what you really want to capture, not a bunch of, dumpy screen passes kind of thing that wouldn't hold your quarterback up as much.
Well, and then the last thing, that we're kind of talking about, and this is definitely my take on it for fantasy is, we discussed a little bit about like potentially getting rid of kickers in the actual game, which I wouldn't agree with, but in fantasy, get them out.
I wouldn't say necessarily get rid of kickers, but make other people on the team do it,
Oh, I was just talking about for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, okay,
if you play in a fantasy league with kickers,
you hate the kicker.
You should lobby to not have them in there anymore.
Okay. I know you're all about that.
Yeah, well, we're going to levy that into the next topic right here, where we are going to be keeping it with the NFL, and we are going to talk a little bit about what we think are going to be the NFL division winners. It's been very tight with all these divisions. 8-4, 7-4, 8-4, 7-5, 8-4, 7-5, 8-4, 7-6. I just read off the AFC top two teams. And in each division, they're all 8 and 7 win teams.
No, it's crazy.
And so where are we at with division winners? That's our who you got for today.
All right, I like it.
Ty, who you got for division winners? Let's roll through this.
All right, so for the AFC, I don't like the Bills anymore. I mean, the Patriots look like they are the real deal. I'm going to change the vote. Go New England. As much as that
I'm in agreement with you there.
AFC West,
in full agreement with you there.
I think the AFC West, it's finally time to start seeing that division for what it is. The Chiefs have pretty good control over it now. Of course, they had the stumble, but I think the Chiefs are going to run away with that one. NFC North, I do like also the first place team right now. The Ravens do have, they take some chances. They may, fall on their own sword, but does Cincinnati have what it takes to catch them? Maybe not. I thought the Browns originally were going to potentially win that, or at least go in as a wild card, be that dark horse for a long playoff run. Right now, they're at a 500 team. I think they still can.
They're only 2 games back.
Yeah, that's it. I know they could still be a wild card team. Don't get me wrong. Now the AFC South
that's anybody's division.
Yeah, the AFC South is really interesting. Not because the Texans or Jaguars in there; they suck. 2-10, both of them, garbage. But the Colts, look out, dude.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Man, I'm going to take the Bengals.
Yeah, so
the AFC North is a different one for you, and then let's talk a little bit about the Colts. Right. So, I mean, what are you seeing with the Colts?
Oh, with the Colts, I mean, the fact that who's that running back? My God, scored 5 touchdowns.
Jonathan Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor. Wow, they're just getting it done. I mean, they're putting together a nice run of wins, and I don't know how you don't really pick them over a banged up Tennessee team who seems to be really missing Derrick Henry right now.
I mean, they're missing Derrick Henry. They're missing Julio Jones. They're missing Brown.
That's right.
I mean, they are just really riding the injury bus right there, and they've been able to pull out some wins here over the season, but they have not looked good as of recently, especially since Derrick Henry's gone down.
Yeah,
and I think the Colts have definitely looked better. Kind of coming down the stretch here, and they're right behind them. So 8-4, 7-6. So I mean it's a close race here, and I think now here's the thing though is the Colts have to be a better record team. They can't tie. The tiebreaker goes to the Titans because the Titans swept the division series. So they played early in the year. So that's the thing for the Colts. The Colts have to make up not only the two games.
Right.
They have to get in front of them. So that's the challenge for the Colts there. But I do like the Colts.
They're in position that it can happen. And with an extended season, it's very possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving over to the NFC, I'm going to take the Cowboys. Yeah, I think the Cowboys getting their complements of receivers back, getting healthy, even with Zeke banged up. Like Tony Pollard is a great backup. I mean, he is an exceptional talent to have backing up Zeke. So I think the Cowboys are easily going to take that division. Cardinals. I'm taking in the NFC West. They got 2 games up on the Rams, who look like they can't get anything right now. I know they
did win, but
over the weekend, but they played the Jaguars. Like I need to see them get back on track against a good team. They lost Robert Woods. They got Odell Beckham, but Odell Beckham isn't Robert Woods like in that offense.
Yeah.
Robert Woods was fully integrated there. So I'm definitely going to take the Cardinals there. I think we may be lockstep there.
I think for the North and South too. I mean, I don't know how you don't pick Packers and Bucks.
It's exactly. It's Packers and Bucks, and those they're 4 games up or 3 games up on those teams.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easily set, I think, or 4 games up on.
Well, the Vikings lost to Detroit. Come on, don't be that team. Yeah,
so. The Vikings are a strange team, man. The Vikings
very strange.
They're that team that can play with anybody.
Yeah.
but they can also lose to anybody.
Right.
Like that's just been the story of the Vikings for like the past since Kirk Cousins has gotten there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Saints.
What they've been.
Yeah,
is they just can't get out of their own way.
Yeah,
and some weeks they play great, and you're like, how is this team 5-7?
Right.
Like, how is this possible? And then they go out and they play the Lions. You're like, oh, okay. And then obviously the Bucs going to take this out there. So I think we're pretty lockstep on the NFC side. Correct?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, come on,
okay.
Panthers. That's the